Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Sunday Social Podcast. My name is Derek.
I'm Jonathan.
And today we are talking all about volunteers.
Yeah.
How to get them, recruit them. Once we get them, how do we make sure that they're good, they're taken care of, they're not burning out? And so we're going to go over some good questions. Jonathan has personally written
Burnt
a lot
out?
of books.
No,
He's burnt out himself.
No.
No, but he's written a lot of books on this, so he's the perfect person to be speaking on this. I've been a volunteer.
I've been a volunteer as well.
So
I've been on all sides of it. You too. You've led volunteers. You've been a volunteer. Yeah.
So we're able to kind of speak from experience on the best practices on being able to do that. So the first question we got is, what are some effective strategies for recruiting volunteers?
Yeah, honestly, so especially when I get this question to social media, the best thing you can do is invite people personally. If you're building a social media team, you need a certain type of qualification, you need a certain vibe.
Yeah.
So find the people that model that and approach them personally. But honestly, that's the best way to recruit for anything.
Right.
If you've ever experienced this where you say an announcement from the stage, hey, we need kids ministry volunteers. Maybe you'll get one person and it's probably the one person you were hoping wouldn't volunteer. That you're not going to get responses just because there's this I don't know, have you heard that psychological thing where it's someone's getting murdered and if there's a bunch of people around, no one's going to do anything. But if you're the only person around, you're going to do something because it's I have to act. Whereas if there's a ton of people around, everyone assumes someone else is going to do something, right?
Yeah.
That's the idea is make it a personal thing. And most people want to, there's a disconnect. Either okay, I'll think about it or I'll do it later. But if you ask someone, honestly, when I went to the same church as you, I was involved in, it's a Next Steps team, VIP team or whatever. And there was this line out front and I would just go up one by one and asking people hey, how long have you been coming to, Pearl Street? Do you serve on a team yet? And they were I've been thinking about it. Almost everyone said I've been thinking about it if they've been coming for a while. And I'm well, let's do it right now. Let's talk. I think you would actually be great. And I would even tell them a specific team that they'd be good for. Inviting personally is the best way to get people.
100% agree. From personal experience, I've been to a church where my wife and I wanted to get involved. We're thinking about it. And, every church has their own growth track or next steps type of thing. So we went to that.
And that works.
It works.
Because it's a personal thing. It's a smaller group.
It works to a certain extent. I think from my experience, we went and this is nothing against the church. It's amazing. But we went and I think after the night, they had different booths for the teams you're interested in.
It's too many options.
Yeah, there was too many options. Yeah. It was very overwhelming. And then two, the person there was all right, well, if you're interested, here's this card, scan the QR code and sign up. And it felt very I don't know.
Impersonal.
Yeah, disingenuine. They weren't excited to see people interested in their team. And I think that's where that personal touch comes from. Obviously not in a pushy way, but we are so excited that you're interested in our team. Hey,
yeah.
If it's possible, let's grab coffee. Let me learn more about you. What makes you interested in this team? I think if they had done that, my wife and I would be serving there already.
Well, and I think another problem with that is you do this at the welcome to church lunch or the new here, where you've been coming maybe 2 or 3 times, and you're yeah, I think I want to be here. But you're not even fully there yet.
Right.
That volunteering thing often comes a little bit after. Either it comes the first week where we've decided, that does happen whenever you're I'm ready to get involved. I'm coming from another church. But if have maybe never volunteered in a church before, or you're coming in a little hesitantly, maybe coming off staff or maybe coming off feeling burnt out from the previous church, it might be a little bit slower. So there's a timing element with that too. I had a friend, actually my co-wrote on this at North Point Ministries. What they did is they created this BuzzFeed quiz where it was tell us about yourself. It was almost you could get which Disney princess you are, but instead it was which volunteer team is right for you.
Yeah.
And it was sort of that same sort of personal thing where it removed the options for you. So based on your aptitude, it's this is what you'd be perfect for.
Yeah.
I saw another church that I was involved with in Dallas. They did this 4th of July celebration, right? And they had all these volunteer positions that were low impact where it's we need someone to fill drinks in the coolers. Mm-hmm. And I was yeah, we could volunteer for that. And that was a cool way that the church got a lot of people to volunteer for the first time. And then afterwards you say, hey, by the way, I think you'd be great at this. Again, inviting people personally from a short-term commitment to then say, now, would you like to be involved regularly?
Yeah, I think it's both and.
Yeah.
It's having a night where people can come in or maybe there's a process.
Or you can invite from stage. It's not it's not always a bad thing to invite from stage. You're just going to get a lower response because it's you're shooting at no specific specific target. Whereas like you're a sniper rifle with like this person, I think
Right.
they'd be perfect. Grab them.
It's knowing the process and then following along with that process. But if there is a growth track or something, if you're out in, waiting in the lobby or whatever, and you see somebody that could potentially be a good fit, approaching them,
Yeah.
to me, if I'm on the other side of that, it's like, one, they noticed me.
Yeah.
But then two, they're personally asking me to be a part of something. Why would I want to turn that down?
Especially if you can target something based on a conversation where like, dude, the way you're talking right now, I think you would kill it at this.
Yeah.
Because that shows that like you have noticed them, like you said,
Right.
but like noticed who they are even.
Right.
And that's really valuable. Like that's a cool thing to me where I'm like, you kind of know me. You
Yeah.
called something out that you saw in me and I maybe
Yeah.
didn't see that for myself.
At the church we were both at, we had a pastor that would do that all the time. Like his whole goal was on a Sunday just to talk with people, and if he can plug them into the right people, then that's a win for him. You know? So if he was talking to somebody that maybe was a teacher or worked at a daycare, it's like, hey, have you talked to our kids pastor? And he would try to bring somebody from the kids team in the conversation to make that touch point.
That's a cool role for like an executive pastor, but I think every church, every leader should do that. Like if I'm in charge of worship and I meet someone that's maybe not a musician, but I'm like, dude, I need to get them connected with so-and-so. The thing that happens when you do that is then the kids ministry pastor is going to meet someone who's a musician and be like, you need to join the worship team. Like we're on the team together instead of just trying to, because I think there's like this scarcity mentality where like, oh, we got to get volunteers. But dude, if you actually approach people personally, I think you'll get a yes like 2 out of 3 times. Like you'll get a lot of yeses.
On that topic, we kind of touched on it a little bit, but what are some ways you feel that, because I've seen it to where we're just trying to fill a spot, so we put somebody in there and it's not the best fit.
Oh, yeah.
So what are some ways you feel like churches can do a better job of making sure, based on the gifts that people have already, they can fill those roles?
Don't underestimate the value of stalking people on social media. I think that's where you start seeing things, especially when you're talking about creative roles, talking about social media. They don't have to have 100,000 followers, but you can be like, dude, they get social media. They get something about it.
Yeah.
There's someone actually on our team, Brianna, she runs our social media. Her personal account is maybe 2,000, 3,000 followers. But like when we hired her for Sunday Social, like we knew she would kill it for us. And now we have 90,000 or whatever, however many followers we have, right?
Shout
like
out, Brie.
Kills it, right?
Yeah.
Because she models that thing. Same thing. So if you find someone like they're recording videos of themselves playing music, right? Like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, you can see what they're about. But also, and I'm going to have to quote my book, The Volunteer Effect, there's sort of this idea of like, there's value in training people. So sometimes there are people that you want for the team that don't have the skills yet, but we create this little like acrostic life. We're basically the idea of like locations. What type of environment do the volunteer like prefer to put themselves in? So it's like, are they high stress? Then maybe they go in the kids ministry. Are they low stress? They probably need to be in the welcome team, right? Like finding things that's right for their influence. Are they very like, do people like, are they the ones who choose where people go out to eat after church, right? Like that's a highly influential role that they're already filling. So put them in an influential role. Frustrations, what frustrates them? Are they kind of chaotic? They're probably going to do well in the kids ministry. If they hate chaos, don't put them in the kids ministry, right? Experience, what are their experiences? Again, like if you're a customer service person, like you're going to do great at the welcome team or at Next Steps, one of that kind of like higher like personal things. If they're very introverted, maybe don't put them in like even in the parking lot. I think that's one of the things we get wrong with parking lots is we put like the people who are like, that like to talk about football, like the dudes, they're in the parking lot.
Yeah.
But like, that's actually the first face people see when they come into your church. Like that should be the most friendly and the most outgoing and the most welcoming. So I feel like we almost need to flip that specific role. It's a big topic, right? But we want to focus on social media. So really focus on people like, are they that bubbly personality that's going to be fun on video?
I think a good idea first is if you're trying to find and recruit people for your team, like you said, write down a list of like exactly what you're looking for,
aptitudes or like values that they might display, right?
Not everybody needs to be the content creator.
Yeah.
We need people that are coming up with ideas. We need people that are strategizing or organizing things. So maybe you need somebody that's very type A that can have a list and like figure out, okay, how do we get this from point A to point B? A project manager, essentially. How do
there
we
are people who
get
love
those people?
that. Yeah. And there's people who don't do that, and you need both.
Yeah, so you don't need necessarily, quote unquote, a creative person. It could be a very type A, in the spreadsheets type of person, but those are people that help get the ball moving, So I think we we based on the
A lady on the
criteria-
street, a freak in the spreadsheet. Sorry.
Exactly. I knew you were waiting to say it. You were like, and then
Like, should I
Shiva-
say this? I gotta say it.
But yeah, I think figuring out one who is exactly like the avatar that we are looking for, because if you don't know what you're looking for,
Yeah.
then you're never going to get them. So I think figuring out that first. But so once we've recruited people, we've got them on our team. Now the job doesn't stop there.
No, that's like
At
the
all.
start, right?
You probably think it does, but it doesn't. I think people put so much effort on getting volunteers versus keeping them. And
Yeah.
I think the biggest job we should focus on is keeping a volunteer.
In marketing, they say it's 8 times more. It costs 8 times more money to get a new customer than to keep a customer, right?
There you go.
And so it is. They're so focused on sales, which is it's what we do with approaching volunteers. But like, how do you actually like create an environment? If you create an environment for your team members that's so positive, they're going to invite other people to be on the team anyways. They're going to do your job
Exactly.
for you.
Yeah, because the reality is if you're having high turnover, it doesn't matter how many people you get on your team. Like they're all just going to leave eventually. So
And there's a certain amount of, like, if you work in the kids ministry, it is high turnover. That's a stressful
Right.
position. I've never been to a church where the kids ministry is like, dude, we got everyone we need. Like it's always tough in the kids ministry. I get that.
yeah.
But if you create as fun of an environment as possible, you can counteract some of that.
So what are some ways you think that leaders can appreciate their volunteers a little more to make sure that they feel like they're appreciated?
I mean, I created a book that helps you do this. It has like prayer
Shameless plug,
prompts.
shameless plug.
But so the idea is like, are you talking to your volunteers outside of their role? Like, are you only talking to them when you need them to volunteer? Like, hey, I need you to cover. Is that the only time you're texting them? One way, just like the way you interact with them. Are you praying for them? Are you telling them that you're praying for them? Do you remember details about their life? Gifts are good, but that's usually like, that's like a Band-Aid solution. Like, we
Mhm.
gave you a gift or we gave you a $5 gift card. But
Yeah.
honestly, if you're appreciating them just with your words, that matters way more than a gift,
Yeah.
right? Like that's so much more. And even appreciating them in private. So often, we call them out in a huddle, which is nice. But like, again, like that can feel very manipulative because you're
Mhm.
using them as an example to inspire others, very self-serving. So appreciate people, but also create environments where people can get to know each other. It starts with you, right? If you're not being friendly, your volunteers aren't going to be friendly toward each other. But like,
Yeah.
introduce people. Like in that volunteer huddle, call out like, dude, so and so had a baby. That congratulations, guys, and not to be like, and they still showed up this morning, right? But like, dude, like let's celebrate them. That's awesome. Like
You can't even get here on time.
yeah, but like, we do that, right? But like, it is like, are you like creating common points of connection with people?
Right.
Like, dude, you had a baby. That's awesome. Like you introduce things about people so that then they can connect on those bases.
I think we oftentimes overthink or overanalyze, leadership or what it means to be a good leader. I think it's just literally caring for people, treat others how you would want to be treated. So
Yeah.
I think it's as simple as that. If I was a volunteer on this team, what are some ways that I would feel appreciated? And yes, everybody's different.
Yeah.
Some people are words of affirmation. Some people, we all know the 5 love languages.
Don't do touch.
Yeah,
Just
that's-
avoid it.
That's
please.
weird. I think if we understand that and we know people just based on who they are and getting to spend some time with them, then
Yeah.
we can show, okay, this person loves when I'm able to appreciate them verbally, or
Yeah.
maybe they are a gifts person, But I think reverse analyzing what are some ways that I feel appreciated as a person, as a human, because yeah, we can read all the books we want that tell us what to do, but if we're not putting those into practice, then it's really just words on a page at that point. People are people,
Mhm.
and we just all want to be a part of something. That's a lot of the reasons why people want to be a part of a church and a volunteer team. But then also one thing for me too, which I know it's hard, right? Because there are so many people that are involved in things, but I feel like the worst part is when you leave a team and then that person just completely forgets about you.
Yeah.
And I know it's a nature of church. I get it. But I think understanding that people are people, and you almost feel like, well, were they just friendly to me because I was on their team?
Yeah.
You know?
Or if they have to take a break for 4 months because the semester is particularly grueling at school, right? Like,
Yeah.
and then suddenly you're like, you see their post about them graduating and you're like, hey, how's it going? No.
Yeah.
If you didn't talk to them for 4 months and now you're suddenly talking to them,
Yeah.
such a user feeling. And again, no one's motive is that, right?
No,
Like
of course
we
not.
just see we see the planning center roster and we see all the spots we need to fill and we're like, oh gosh, we're scrambling every week, right? But like have some thought during the week. I mean, in marriage, that's what like I for a while I would put on my to-do list, like be romantic to my wife, not romantic in like a, sexual way or whatever, but like, like buy her a gift or just like text her something nice in the middle of the day, right? Like I had to build it into my system because I'm such a systems person, but I had to build the personal part into the systems, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, which is not bad though. I think it's just
No.
ways to remind yourself, hey, let me show appreciation for this person.
Yeah.
And allow this person to feel heard and seen. And two, I think another thing is, which I feel like, and not to like, blow your head up, but I think you do a great job at seeing where people are, at least from my experience. Like, hey, how are you doing with this? Hey, how is this? Because I think a lot of people will naturally have this sense of burden because they don't want to disappoint their leader.
Yeah.
And feel like, hey, I kind of want us to take a step back, or hey, this is kind of a lot for me in the season. And I think you do a great job. For me, even just being an employee here, you're able to see like, hey, are you still excited about this? Hey, how's the workload? How, and I think,
and I'm willing to actually do something about it.
Yeah.
And not be upset. Like if you're like, if you tell me like tomorrow, you're like, dude, I got this job, I think I'm going to take it. I'll be like, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like you have to be really willing to lose people, which I think is key.
Yeah. Kind of beating people to the punch in that sense of like, because I've heard countless stories of like, man, I'm not really excited about serving here anymore. Or, man, I'm kind of feeling like, I got too much on my plate, right?
By the time they've told you that, it's too late.
Yeah.
But if you'd asked them ahead of time, you could have done something before it was like, if they tell you, I'm feeling burnt out, it's done. You're done.
Yeah.
Like they've gone past the point of no return.
Yeah. This is a perfect segue to burnout because that's the kind of the last portion that we're going to talk about. So once we feel like we've gotten volunteers, they're cared for, there's this sense of people feeling, burnt out.
Yeah.
So, which you've written a lot of content on, but what are some signs that you can be aware of to show that people are getting to that space where they're kind of at their end, like they're feeling like they're burnt out?
I mean, the most obvious one is when they block themselves off for 3 months at a time on Planning Center, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if they do that, if you see that, don't assume because it might just be a busy season. They might just so happen to be traveling every weekend for the next 3 months, right? Like that does happen. We've been in that role. My wife and I were like, we were gone so long, and like
I remember.
like it's a real thing, or they just had a baby, right? Like have that conversation.
Yeah.
Be like, okay, I noticed you blocked yourself 3 months, and not a policing approach, but like, you doing okay? Like, do you need some time off? Like, let's figure out a strategy to like really give you a chance to rest here, right? Like approaching that. When people give you hesitant yeses, so like, let's say you text them, and be like, hey, I was wondering if you could just like fill in. Someone couldn't make it this Sunday. Can you fill in? And we're like, oh, I was going to go to a concert with my friends, but yes, that's a hesitant yes. That's a caveat yes. That's them afraid to say no, and they're hoping you will say no for them. And you won't, of course, because you're worried about your roster, right?
Yeah.
But that's when you'd be like, oh, dude, I totally get it. How, like, are you feeling like you need some time off anyways? Like, approach that. Again, the goal is you want them for the long haul. Like, I know it's so tempting to just fulfill this one Sunday. I got it. It's a duct tape solution to get this one Sunday fixed, right? But the problem is then you've lost that volunteer a year from now, and you're not going to get them back. It just doesn't happen, right? Like, okay, there's exceptions, right? But like, check ahead of time. Be like, yeah, I just need a couple months off, or I think I'm on the wrong role, or like I think I'm serving too much, or like just find out what the thing is that's causing that and approach it.
Sometimes as leaders, especially if we're on staff, we can put an over reliance on volunteers, but we have to understand they're giving up their time, and we have to be aware of everybody's stages of life, everybody's availability, because a lot of times that can play into it. More often than not, younger people have more availability than older people.
Single people, people without kids.
And so those are all things we have to understand and be aware of and know. And yes, it takes a lot of work, but that's why you're in that position.
And when you know your volunteers, okay, this person just got married to someone who doesn't volunteer. Know that their availability is going to drop, or they just had a kid, their availability is going to drop. And you can even proactively be like, dude, you're going to have a kid. Like, that's amazing. Do you need some time off? Like, if they feel appreciated, if they feel like you care about them, if you feel like they feel like you're protecting them, they're going to go above and beyond. But it's this kind of like this, there's this natural tendency where like, if I whisper, you lean in, right? If I yell at you, you lean back. And the idea is as I'm gentle with you, as I'm not pulling too much, as I'm holding you loosely, you actually like join more, right? It's kind of it's kind of the dating thing, right? Like if you play it cool on the first date, they're more interested, they're more intrigued, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you're like, I need you, I need you, I need you, they're like, dude, chill out.
Yeah.
I feel trapped.
Again, treating people like people instead of treating people as a thing to fill a role.
Yeah.
Because when we do that, people are smart. We can sense that.
Yeah.
Oh, they want me in this position. So I'm just here to fill a place, you know?
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we can get into that space because maybe there's pressure from the higher ups or, you know, whatever that feeling is of like, oh, I just want to get these people in or maybe you're just trying to delegate because you have a lot on your plate. We understand. We've been
Totally
there.
get it, yeah.
But at the same time, like Jonathan was saying, it's all about the long game. So instead of seeing just this season of life, it's like, well, what about next year? Will I have this person still? I think a lot of times too, and this is just from experience, people automatically feel like they're not bought in just because they can only serve once a month or twice a month. But that's not the case.
Yeah.
They want to serve. It's just that's their life right now.
Yeah.
So don't feel like they're not bought in because they're not here every week or on every, you know, volunteer night or whatever.
Yeah. We do ourselves a disservice by like thinking about what's convenient for us. Mm-hmm. So like imagine we want them to serve at least 2 times a month because otherwise like, you know, it shows they're not committed, right? But like imagine your best volunteer, if they're like, dude, I'm in a busy season right now, I can only serve once every 2 months. You'd be like, heck yes, do whatever you need to do. I just want you on my team, right? But like, why don't we do that on the front end? Mm-hmm. Like making it easier for them to commit. And that's something from the volunteer effect too, is like the idea of create low barriers to entry. Yep. So often we're like, we need you to commit for 5 years of your life. They're like, it's an unending commitment. We need you to serve every 2 Sundays. We need you to be here at all 4 services. You know, like we create this like, I don't know if I can commit to that, right? Yeah. Like, dude, let's try one Sunday and see how you feel. Yeah. You don't have to, if you don't like it, we'll find you a different team, right? Like create low barriers to entry is huge.
And make it fun.
Fun.
I think that's another thing.
People are people.
Right. My job when I was on staff and I led the media team on Sunday was how can I make this as fun as possible? We had our own media room, thankfully, and I would have music playing. We'd have like we had a TV on there and I would show like who's taking what. We would have everything organized. And as a volunteer, I can tell that it helped the environment. And I know that because people still to this day tell me it was so fun. Yeah. Like we had so much fun. Yes, we're there to serve God and we're there to give our gifts. But at the same time, if we're not having fun doing it, it's only a matter of time before I want to just hop to another team. We always have that team that's always like looking like they're having a blast. Yeah. And you're like, man, I want to be a part of that.
Well, and the reality is like you said, we're serving God, we're doing all this stuff. But like there's this logical disconnect between like you're serving God by being part of the media team. I'm taking photos. Am I really serving God? Right? Like I know that's the reason like people feel like I want to volunteer, right? But like at some point that switches to being like, these are my people. This is a part of my social calendar, which is okay. Yeah. Like that's one of the things we create volunteerism as is a way to like make a big church small, right? So are we giving them space to have fun and to like connect? Exactly. I think that's key. Like, and your kids ministry should be probably the most fun environment, right? Like every team should be so much fun because it is, especially kids ministry. I always go back to that. Kids ministry is like a dreadful experience, right? Unless you're able to make it fun and like connect people, give people a chance to like be with their friends, right?
Just to kind of wrap things up, I think volunteers in the church will obviously are necessary, but it's up to us as leaders. If you're leading a team, no matter the department, we have to do our due diligence of making sure they're taken care of. Yeah. And I know this is another shameless plug, but Jonathan has a really great resource that he just put out. That's a practical way to keep track of your volunteers and make sure they're cared for, because I think a lot of times we're so focused on the new person that we forget about the person that's been there for a couple years. Yeah. And we think, oh, they've been here, they're never going to go away. But if you're not taking care of them, they will. Yeah. So it's up to us to make sure that we're keeping track of everybody and being okay with
caring for them.
Yeah. It's like we have to just care for them. So that was the whole purpose and reason behind this episode was we feel like volunteers can sometimes be in positions where they're not cared for the way they should be, right? And we're so focused on getting new people that we can oftentimes forget about the ones that have been engaged already.
Yeah.
You know, hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we're curious, what are some of your thoughts on volunteers and how you've been able to, as a leader, care for them? Or if you're a volunteer currently, what are some ways that you have been appreciated in the past that people have done or gone the extra mile for you? So
Yeah.
let us know in the comments. Thank you so much for checking out this episode, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.